Thank you, Nidish, for having me here, and thank you, Guru, for the space. This is a beautiful office, and always enjoy coming here. Um, so my journey, all the way from the beginning, I'll probably spend about 10 minutes talking about how I started and where I started, and then go to the revenue growth part, and which will be probably more interesting to you all. Just to understand the audience, how many of you here are already working in startups or have their own startups? And how many intend to be an entrepreneur, startup? Okay. How many from tech side? Okay. And everybody else from non-tech, I assume? Yes. Okay. So that I don't talk too much tech then. Okay. So I went to Nitte, a friend of mine is sitting there. He also works for a startup now. I went on to do my master's in the US. I worked there for about 5 years and returned back to Mangalore because I wanted to start something here. I started, I'm an engineer by background, so I used to write a lot of code. So I thought, the only thing I can start is a tech company, right? So I started writing a lot of code, had some product ideas that I wanted to build, did not work, then decided to work with a few people from the US, so I got some projects sent out from there to some common friends I had, and we started working on a project on legal data. So I'll talk a little bit about what I do as a company. So, UniCourt is a data company. We aggregate court records. Now, court records are public records that are cases that are filed in the US. We collect them from various courts and we make it available as a service for people to access to know more information on a case, or they are doing background research or the various use cases. Now, these records are hosted by the court because court has to, by law, make it available to the public to view this data. But how it is made accessible to the public is a very gray area. There's never really a clear line. So there are about 3,000 plus courts in the US, depending on jurisdiction, depending on the state, the case laws and all that. And each court is sovereign, which means the judge pretty much decides how the system internally and externally should be for that court in terms of how the court is viewed. So each court has its own website. They make this data that is available within their case management system. So whenever somebody goes to file a case in the court, they have a database internally, and there's a vendor that they bring on saying, open this data to the public. So each court builds their own website. So if a lawyer is accessing, is practicing, needs to know information from a court in Los Angeles versus a court in San Diego versus a court in San Francisco, they have to go to each of these websites. So what we do is we aggregate this data from various courts and we put it in the database and make it accessible. Okay. However, that was not how we started. The way we started was, I had a client who came to me. This was back in 2010. They said they run a debt relief company. Now this is 2010. So 2010 was just after the recession had hit. Some of the worst things had happened to people. People had lost their jobs. And US being a credit-driven economy, every person on an average in the US has about 5 to 7 cards. Each card with a minimum debt of $7,000 to $10,000. Okay. So they lost their jobs, they started defaulting on their credit cards, and what the creditors would do is they would file a case against them. So this client had come to me, he was running a debt relief company, and what this debt relief company would do is they would sign up these debtors as clients, negotiate a settlement with the creditor on behalf of the client because it's a legal process. if the debtor directly goes to the creditor, they will never give them a set-off or there's no negotiation. But through this legal process, there was a negotiation process. So if somebody owed $10,000, they would help them settle it for 7,000 or 6,000 or 8,000, depending on who the creditor is. And we would come up with a settlement plan for them, which is a 36-month or a 42-month settlement plan, and they would pay this off. So this was the business that my client was doing at that point in time. He said, it's 2008 has already happened, 2010, so the effects of 2008 took about a year or two on the consumer economy to be actually shown in the market. So he said, I want to grow my business. So he said, I want to pull legal data from courts, cases which are being filed by these creditors on the debtors, so that I can start marketing to them. So I was an engineer back then. I knew data, but I didn't know legal data. So every engineer or anybody, for them to understand a domain takes a lot of time, right? So legal data, the legal market in general on the technology side has never grown. It's probably one of the last market that has been touched by technology. So I asked my friends, who knows about legal data? What do you guys think about this idea? So people said, legal what? So nobody had heard about legal data in general. So I said, this is either a really stupid decision or a really big opportunity for me to get on. So I said, let me try it out. We started collecting these cases and we started marketing to these defendants who were being sued. And I think we did about 2 to 3 courts in 3 months. We started doing the marketing, and the marketing was basically, hey, John Smith, if you think Citibank has sued somebody by name John Smith, if you think you are that person, okay, please get in touch with us, we can help you. And we would send out these mail pieces, physical copies of mail, and this is in the use, we send them out. We'd send about 25,000, 30,000 out in a month. This would go on a Friday evening, and Monday morning when the sales people would come in, the sales floor would be buzzing with rings. We got about a 12% response rate on these marketing activities, and that was huge. So the company grew, and this was in 2011. So in 2012, so we were doing this, so I was doing this as a client for my client, right? And the deal I had with this person was, if I do this for some time, if I like it, I want to spin this into a separate product of its own. So we did this for about a year or two. We had revenue coming in because I was doing it as a service. In 2014, we decided to spin this off into a separate product. That's when we formed UniCourt. Now, when we formed UniCourt, we had this data of all the cases that were being filed. We were collecting, we were getting good at it, but we didn't know who else wanted it, what the market was, who our clients are going to be. We said, let's make it into a SaaS product, because it's sort of the most intuitive way to go about doing this. And in 2014, we started this company. The first year, first half of the year, we spent figuring out who our clients are going to be. We had a revenue of about $10,000 that entire half of the year. Okay. The second year, we started building our product, making the product better. We put a pricing page on the site. We made it an automated sign up, right? So people would come in. If it's SaaS, trying to cater to different customers on a starter plan. We called it starter at that point in time. We had a pay-as-you-go plan. So we had, it's $0, you don't pay monthly subscription. If you use something, then you pay. Then we had a starter plan like $19 per month. You get to do some additional things. And it's legal data, so our assumption is the primary market are lawyers, right? Because anybody who does litigation or is involved in litigation day in and day out needs this data. So we created one more $49 plan. So we had 3 plans. So this was in 2015. Now, the question was sales. How do we sell this? How do we market this? How do we bring traffic to the site? That was a big challenge. I'm from an engineering background. When we started the company in the US, I came as the technology head, and my other partner there, Josh, happened to started working as a CEO, right? But the market was new for us, right? We had never sold to attorneys, lawyers, and trust me, it's not easy selling to lawyers. Okay? It's very difficult selling to lawyers. In 2015, we did a lot of going to the meeting a lot of lawyers and conferences, trying to sell it. We got a few clients here and there, but the product never grew. We didn't have enough traction. In 2015, we ended up with probably about $60,000 in revenue the entire year. Now, that was not bad because we still had we had a first client who was still paying us, but not as a product, not as a SaaS product. I was writing pretty much most of the code. We were just 8 to 15 people during that time. So it wasn't really big of a problem. But the question was, how do we scale this? How do we drive more revenue? In 2016, 17, we continued doing sales the traditional way. We would reach out to law firms, go to some conferences, meet people. Then we decided we actually need a sales team to drive sales. So we outsourced sales because we were not salespeople. We didn't know how to manage a sales team. So we outsourced sales. And when we outsourced sales, we were outsourcing it to a salesperson. The salesperson was very good at selling to us. So we signed up for, so this was somebody who was very knowledgeable about doing SaaS sales to lawyers. So he made a pretty good pitch. We were convinced. We didn't know how else to grow. We paid him some money, and we started dialing out, doing cold calls. We got some traction, but it didn't really reflect the way we wanted to in terms of the revenue. In 2000, so we spent about a year doing this, testing out the market, testing the pricing out, and all that. In 2017, we actually won a startup competition. And when we won that, we got to meet a lot of like-minded people and people in the industry where we spoke about our problems. Everybody had gone through this problem. Some people had faced that problem as part of another company, so they made sure when they started up, they did not repeat those problems. But we got a lot of advice on, hey, you guys are a data company, so why are you not using your data to do the marketing for you? Right? And this was public data. Right? So in 2017, we decided to go the digital marketing route, complete SEO route. In mid-2017, we put up about 25 million pages on Google. Google was very happy with it. It crawled us a lot. About 18 million pages Google indexed. And we started, the traffic just spiked on our website. We said, okay, here is something at least. And the idea was again lawyers, litigation data, lawyers, right? But when the traffic spiked, we saw a whole different behavior. 95% of the customers that were signing up were a normal Joe who was looking for somebody's name, their relative's name, and ended up on our site because there was a case filed against their relative and he wanted to know more about that. Somebody whose neighbor, they were searching for the neighbor's name and ended up with the same situation. A mother who was looking up for a proposal for her daughter searched his name and ended up finding a criminal case about him on our site. Somebody who wanted to do a joint venture with a company, searched for that other company's name on Google, ended up with other contractual cases that they had because they had failed to meet whatever contract they had. So we saw a massive consumer traffic, and we were probably the first people in the legal industry. I think even now we are, and we openly talk about this, and this is not some secret, that there's a massive consumer market for this data because litigation, see, everybody, whether you like it or not, you're bound by law at the end of the day. And litigation, if you get into litigation, it's not something easy. Most people don't understand it, they rely on lawyers. Okay? And it's something that has a high impact on your life because it's a life-changing event. So we realized that. Okay? So a lot of traffic started coming to our site. We started growing the consumer side. We started focusing more on the consumer side. We said, we have tried selling to attorneys a lot. We are not going to do it anymore. We'll see it at the future date. We started growing this, and in about 2017, we hit about, I think probably about $110,000 in revenue in the entire year. And this was completely SEO efforts, right? Traffic. In 2018, so this was for about 6 months. We started this in mid-May till the end of December. In Jan, our traffic started declining. We had about 20 million pages, 18 million pages at that point in time indexed in Google. And in 3 months, it came down to 2 million. And by May, we had about 400,000 pages just indexed on Google. So something had gone wrong. So I was not an SEO person, I was a technical person. So I started learning about SEO. I started meeting other people in the industry, taking their feedback on what is important, why did this happen, right? And then we started making corrections to that. And now we are again back to, not back where we were, but it's growing well. But SEO has its own, there's a technical aspect to it, and there's a science to how you go about doing it. There's a methodical way if you go about doing it, and if you do it right, it can change your life for a company. So this is about 2017. 2018 we again grew. We started making those corrections. We hit about, I think, about 500,000. But every company has a goal of what they set to be, and like $1 million is always that first goal that you want to reach. But to really reach that $1 million in recurring revenue, ARR is annual recurring revenue. It's $83,333 a month that you have to hit in MRR. Okay. Now, $83,000 in MRR is not a small amount. So we started working backwards. We started seeing what kind of customers are we targeting. We increased our prices. Pricing is a huge aspect because when you're doing a product, there is you try to compare it with what's in the market and try to price it. So there are various methods. We increased our prices. We didn't see an impact on our customers. We changed the plans. We went after different segments. But it took us a lot of understanding the customers that are entering our funnel to really figure out who do we segment out, who do we price out, how do we price for each of those segments, and what the product should actually evolve to, right? And right now, as of today, we have two separate segments. We have a consumer segment that's totally separate, and then we have an enterprise segment that's totally separate. On the consumer segment, we do the same thing. On the enterprise segment, we sell to large law firms, insurance companies, even startups. Startups actually spend a lot for this data because they can do a lot of other things. Our average enterprise customer varies from anywhere between $10,000 a month to a year to anywhere to $100,000 a year. But it's taken us a lot of effort to figure out who these customers are, how to sell to them, what is their need. On the consumer side, it's just a web application now that they access. On the business side, it's completely APIs that they access. We had a seat-driven pricing methodology before. We thought if a firm of 2,000 lawyers comes in, they'll take 2,000 seats, and overnight we'll have revenue that's 50 times of what we are. No, that didn't happen. The real need for large enterprises was APIs. They said we don't want another product, but we want your data, so we'll integrate it with the existing products that we internally use. Right? So this is a learning curve that you go through. But I tell you, it took us 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. It took us 6 years to hit that 1 million ARR. Okay? Today we have close to 11 million pages indexed on Google. We get about 2.5 million visits a month. 65% of that is mobile traffic. Of the sessions, about 2.5 million sessions, our conversion rate is about 1% on mobile, about 1.5% on desktop. Desktop, the conversion is a lot higher because of the nature of the product. We get about 30,000 leads a month. That's how many leads we get. Okay. Our conversion on the consumer side is about 4.8%. So 4.8% of the leads that, of the 2.5 million sessions, about 1.5% leads to 4.8% from that gets converted into paid signups. Okay. But these are consumers. They use it. Average life of these are about a month to month and a half. Okay. So we now there's a different challenge, right? For us to increase revenue, it's not about just new signups. It's about the customers that we got. How do we retain them? Right. So at different stages, it's different challenges. So that's that. On the business side, we have now figured out how to put sales teams. So we have a sales teams in the US that are focused on each industry. So we selling, just because you have a product, the product might do the same thing for each industry, but figuring out how to sell to one industry versus another industry is a whole different ballgame, right? So this is where we are now. Okay. Now, probably I want to take a pause here. I don't want to talk too much. I think I've spoken enough. What would be helpful is if we can probably do some Q&A or interact and ask questions, and might be I can be more relevant there with question and answers. Anything is open.
I think you have any questions related to startup, maybe technical or the marketing side, whatever, you can ask him and or you share his side. Then answer group also you can discuss.
Yes, sir.
So you said that you were making like 50K about 2015 and then 100K 2017. Like, what was the team size back then and how were you funding yourself? You said that you did pricing.
Yeah, we are a completely self-funded company. We haven't raised any external capital, and the way we were managing that is by not spending too much.
How big was your team back then?
Yeah, so so we had set some goals for ourselves. So until we hit this revenue, we are not going to grow unnecessarily. And when we hit a certain point in revenue, we said we are going to start investing that in growing the teams and growing the product. That's how we kind of manage it. That's why it took us 6 years to reach 1 million. Okay. In today's date, if you raise funds, your investors will expect you to do that in 6 months or probably a year, and they'll say, we'll give you more money, spend it more on marketing and try to do it faster. That's it. So we did the conscious decision that we took of not raising funds, more from my CEO's side than I wanted to raise, but he said, no, let's not. And that was probably the best decision because it also helped us to pivot and understand the market. See, the longer you are in market, even if you're slow, it's okay. we have seen a lot of startups come up and die. Okay, but we have been there. So we have been able to make some pivotal decisions on what we wanted to be as a company, what the product should be. When most of them did not have, because they had raised funds, they had made some projections, they had to stick that route, and either that route succeeds or fails. A lot of startups don't get to pivot because they have commitments that from investors which they can't override. Hope that answers.
Yeah. Do you regret probably you would have grown a little faster and had raised at least 2 or 3 years?
No, I don't regret because probably if we would have raised, we would not have taken this path. I'm pretty happy with where we are now. Now we don't feel the need to raise, and that is probably the best place to be. And we know more about what the product should be, who our customers are, because we've been here for so long. For somebody who probably comes from a domain expertise with 15, 20 years in the industry doing something, enters the startup market, knows the customers well, knows what is that product that should be, who the customers are, it might be a whole different scenario. For us, we were not from this industry. It was a learning experience, so we took that time to learn.
UniCourt is one of the first company from Mangalore to bootstrap entire organization now. They started from zero and now they are in a position where they are able to reach 1 million in ARR. I think we should really congratulate.
Thank you.
And only few startups follow this method actually. I think many of us know this company like Zoho and Zerodha. This comes under, they follow this bootstrap, and I think we have a new name in that category. That's our own UniCourt.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm Abhishek, so I'm also from tech. So I could relate probably most of your questions. My first initial doubt was, like if you can see, there are a lot of people who can build the same things. So that's what I felt initially. So as an engineer, how do you look at a product and then get to know, okay, this requires me in this level, and then you will, want to understand the market and then work with it. So that initial step.
Yeah.
The thing is, all these markets are niche. So whatever I think of is a niche market where no engineers have already stepped. But then I have so many doubts telling why have they not stepped? Because there are so many, if you can see, similar in your case. So I am thinking of something like this. So I am just thinking, why are not other people who are better engineers, or let's say having better talent than me, not yet entered into the space? And is there a problem? There are so many doubts.
Yeah, because the solution is not engineering.
Yeah.
Right. I'll tell you this because
That's the biggest step that I thought I have to take before even starting.
yeah. See, I learned this the hard way. I'll tell you a story. We have time. You guys stop me if I'm talking too much. Okay? So I'll tell you a story. So this is in 2012. This is in 2012 beginning. This was, we had started a company called, not a company, a product called QuickBite, KWIKBITE.com. Okay. Now, can you guess what it is?
All the restaurants.
Exactly, right? So this was in 2012. And so we used an open source engineer. We used an open source software called Magento, which is an PHP e-commerce platform. We turned it around. We put it on the site. People could come on a site, and this is only for Mangalore. They could select a location, Palmata. It will show up restaurants. You can select what you can order and do that, right? So we built the product. Product was ready. I said, now what to do, right? So a friend of mine had returned from the UK who had done his MBA. So I said, boss, please, some marketing, something, right? So he said, yeah, I'll do the marketing side of it. So he hired one person. He went around all of Mangalore. We got 80 restaurants on our platform. This is in 2012. Everybody gave their menu. Okay, so we had one person to type the menu in with the rates and everything. Site was up, launch day, right? We made some Facebook announcements, those posts are still there, I think. Before that, before we did the launch, we did alpha testing. Okay, so my office is in Pandeshwar, so I ordered from, there was a place called Chicken Hut in Kankanadi, so I ordered from there. I looked at the back end, the order was picked in 5 minutes by the restaurant, I was very happy. 30 minutes passed, 45 minutes passed. Nobody is coming to deliver. I start getting anxious. This was alpha test, so first me. Okay. I went on to, started walking outside my office, so we might have lost a person. 15 minutes passed. I see one guy coming in a cycle, okay, and my parcel is hanging. I can see that. So he comes, I stop him. Are you from Chicken Hut? He said, yeah. I said, what happened? Sir, मैं 20 minutes से वो Forum Mall के घूम रहा था. I didn't find your office. So I said, why did you call me? He said, sir, phone nahi hai. Then I took that, then he said, I gave him some tips. So I realized, picking the order was fine, but we made a change saying you will not be on our site if you don't have a motor vehicle with the phone that you send for delivery, because delivery was being done by them. Because we were not ops people, we were tech people. Then we did beta testing. So I told my friend to do the beta test. He ordered from Tandoor. Okay. He said, we got the order. But he said, one problem, Prashanth. I said, what? The person who came to deliver gave me the menu card. He told, sir, I will give you 20% discount. You would order directly from me. Okay. So our revenue model at that point on time was, we know what orders, we know what amount. Eventually, we'll settle it at the end of the month with the restaurant by taking a transaction on the cut, 7% or something like that. So he said, it's not going to work. Okay. 6 months later, I shut down that product. I said, no, we are not doing this. So some hard lessons. Firstly, business is not about technology. Technology is a very small part, right? We did not need 80 restaurants on our site to do an alpha test and beta test and figure out the problems. And the real challenge was delivery. So we had to own the delivery. That was the key. So it was not the technology, it was the delivery and of course coordinating delivery and all that. And that is what Zomato did very well and they still do, right? So if you think about it from an engineering side, yeah, it's good to start, but you'll see a lot of problems because the engineering part is, right now everything needs technology, there's no question, but it's a very small part of the business. And we have learned that even with our product. It's about really about marketing and figuring out who your customers are and understanding what they need and what the challenges are and trying to solve that using technology, of course. So don't be afraid to start, kick off, and correct.
One small, I don't know if this is even relevant. How do you get to know that data?
How do you
know how's your clients? How do you analyze those data?
Oh yeah,
you don't have the data initially, right?
No, that's why you need to start somewhere, right? So in art, yeah, you have to. That's why we generated a lot of traffic. We didn't know what was going to come, but we knew traffic was going to come. We said, then we'll figure out who our customers are. Now we have a lot of analytics, like what do they click on? Yeah, how do they do? What do they like? What do they don't like? How much do they use? All of that. And we have a prototyping methodology in place before we push any feature out. So we test it, we say, yeah, this must be something that they need, then we figure out and push it. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kiran. Well, initial retirement is when you spoke, but there was one thing that you mentioned about retention. If pulling in clients is one thing, sales, retention is another thing. So in between that, is there something we as a business people are starting that we should keep in mind? Are there any alerts or is there a pattern? How do you know that you have to retain this customer? You will wait for them to notify you that you are giving them to you, or is there a pattern that you study that okay, they are using this?
Yeah. there's no single answer to this. It depends on the nature of the customer, who that is. In our case, we have both consumers and enterprise customers. Enterprise customers you need to handle very differently. It's a very one-on-one approach. We have a customer success team. We are bringing in an account management team, so these people keep meeting with them, talking to them online. On the consumers, you have a lot of consumers, so understanding their behavior and figuring out our maximum churn is on consumers. So I tell you, for example, of the signups that we get every month, 71% cancel in the first month. Okay. Now, of course, we want if we had made them stay for just one more month, the amount of revenue that we could shoot up is huge. So we continuously work to figure out how to do that. Okay. It's not a engineering problem; it's a product problem, right? So as a business, the product really needs to look at why do they cancel. Okay, might be it's in the nature to cancel because they have got what they want. You use NPS scores. You use there are separate products now just to reduce churn. So it's very dependent on the nature of your product and the type of your customer. But this is something that every company struggles with, and they try different methodologies. And it's got a lot to do with remarketing, email dripping, talking on the phone, anything that you can do to make a customer stick. And over the course of time, that process can probably improve, and you see that reduction in that churn. But we are still figuring that out. Our churn right now is 71%. That's what wakes me up every morning.
In addition to that, I mean, what I understand is, broadly, because I'm not a business person myself, but then when I see everything has a pattern, probably like you said, initially it was a product, you started as a service, and then you went into you transitioned yourself. So, there are people from various business here. Now, as a business person, if you see, what are the stages that one should watch out for the business? Like, probably a good side or a bad side in business?
I talk from my personal experience and not really. The bad sign is if you're not growing. Every business should grow. It's, my uncle was part of the Tatas. He was in a pretty senior position. So I used to talk to him. He says, it's grow or go, basically. So every business should grow. So if you're not growing, that's a bad sign. If you're thinking that, hey, it depends. If you're a family business, if you're a one-person thing, you don't want to grow it, then that's a whole different concept. But if you're not growing year on year, then there is some problem with that business because eventually it's going to go down. Okay. From good signs is if you have growth. If you can track that either in revenue, customer retention, in new customers, opening it up to new markets, then we still do that. Like we are still exploring. The nature of a business is data, and we are trying to find for whom this data can be made useful. So we are in a continuous struggle to always find who are the potential customers for this data, and how do we go about what is a go-to-market strategy for that particular customer segment. And that is something that you always have to continue to do. That's from my experience, so I'm not sure if I was able to relate to that.
We are fortunate to say we are getting this kind of first-hand experience sharing session from you. And one thing is always there in my mind that there are very few people who are interested to have a good growing company like yours in a city like Mangalore. First thing I understand with your company name Mangalore Infotech, I know that you love Mangalore city. That's why you are growing over here. I would like to ask you whether Mangalore City has given you any edge over, or you have particular reason to be there in Mangalore, or do you see any potential to grow in Mangalore City?
I feel Mangalore has all the right ingredients for a startup. Okay. Now, we can talk about this from various aspects: infrastructure, funding, talent, all of that. But one of the most important things is talent. And Mangalore has 24 engineering colleges, so there's it's not short of talent. From funding standpoint, now I believe you don't need funding. Money is one aspect, but not the most important aspect. But Mangalore definitely has most of the key things required for a business to grow. From a technology side, I'll tell you where my challenge is. It's getting the lower level talents is not a problem in Mangalore, but getting senior folks definitely is a challenge. A lot of Mangaloreans now live all across the world, Bangalore being one primary location that a huge crowd is. They feel they want to come back, but they don't want to leave the Bangalore lifestyle. Okay. So sometimes we feel it's a challenge, but I think that can also be overcome. Okay. Just companies that grow out of Mangalore put up branches sometimes for various reasons. It's not necessarily that they can't grow here. It could be for business reasons that they have to be there. It could be because they want to attract some specific talent at a senior level there. It could be for various reasons. But growing in Mangalore is probably easy. I would say a lot of people talk about problems, but I don't like to focus on that. I think there's a lot of potential here. I'll tell you some of the examples how we have tried evolving here. Even we had a problem with, it's not just us. I think every company on the technology side has a skill set gap. I think somebody mentioned, I think it was in the news, like India produces 1.3 million engineers, but they are not employable because of industry, academia gap, whatever. So the question is, how do you fill that gap and how do you train them? So we have now started various programs with colleges here. So this year we have done, we started last month called UniCourt workshops. We picked 10 colleges and every month one team from each, we have different teams, one team has adopted one college. Every month they go there, they do progressive workshops on cloud native technologies and new technologies. So in general, we are trying to upskill a lot of them, right? So which means now we are grooming the talent that we also want to get. And our intake is very low, so the idea is they'll be a lot more employable. We are doing research projects with NITK, right? We have funded projects with NITK, we are doing research on image processing and machine learning there, right? So there are a lot of things that you can do. So India, Mangalore especially has all the things that you need, but you have to figure out how to tap into it. It's a problem on its own and you have to figure out how to do that. The easiest way is to throw money and hopefully somebody comes and works for you. But short-lived.